Welcome to Policing TV, and welcome indeed to Hanley, which is a village, or rather a town I should say, in the Stoke conurbation. I'm here with the Chief Constable for Staffordshire Police, Chris Noble. Chris, thank you so much for inviting Policing TV to this quite impressive, I'm just going to tilt the camera up a bit, Fire and Police Hanley. So it's a combined fire and police building, more of which in due course.
Absolutely, and you're very welcome, and obviously we've had a chance to meet some of the teams already, so they're suitably nervous about you catching them on camera, so we'll do our best to be sensitive to that.
We'll do our best to make sure they're not unduly nervous when the camera turns up. So, Chris, we're going to spend various parts of today looking at aspects of your own career. We're going to spend time looking at the journey that Staffordshire Police has been on, some challenging times recently, with some good news emerging just a few weeks ago. And we're also going to be looking at the future for Staffordshire Police. And actually it's the future that we're more looking at in this particular segment in Hanley.
Yes.
So give us an introduction, please, to what you see that future being, how the force and others may go about realising that, and something also about the building that we're stood right outside at the moment.
So there's a lot of themes that wrap up around that. I think one of the reasons why I've brought you to Hanley is this is the busiest part of our force area. And Stoke is probably one of the most enduring challenges for policing and indeed community safety as a whole. A very proud city, has achieved so much, but from an industry point of view, from a sustainability point of view, some really challenging times for it. And we see challenges around not just volume crime, but domestic abuse, children in care. But a city that has got plans around that. And one of the key areas for me looking into the future is about how policing works more effectively in times of austerity and in times of very complex demand, is to how do we work much more effectively around local authorities and health in particular. So a lot of the plans that we're building and developing in Stoke, in particular around how we care more for our children in Stoke, is how do local authorities, chief execs and their senior teams, and the new integrated care boards and partnerships, how do they actually get into the detail of what's going on? What are the drivers? How do we work more effectively to protect the most vulnerable children in our society? So that's one of our biggest challenges for the future. But as I've alluded to, austerity in policing, whatever the new administration will look like or whatever an existing administration will face.
So we're recording this just a week or so before the general election here in the UK.
And irrespective of whatever we're facing or whatever we're working with from a policing point of view on the 5th of July, sustainability is key. And one of the key elements that's driven the changes around where we work in Staffordshire has been about public money and how we spend it more intelligently and how we give police officers and staff a state that actually I'm proud of and that they're comfortable in. So yeah, the journey we've had with fire colleagues coming into Hanley and Tamworth, which is a similar site in the south of the county, has been interesting because you've got two organisations that on paper are blue light services, but culturally very different in lots of very positive ways. So there's been some interesting steps along the way to get to the place we are today.
We'll explore that further as we move into the building. I just want to remark here on a little bit of background as to Hanley and to Stoke, and indeed more broadly Staffordshire, in that the neighbourhood here, Hanley, I had a chance to walk around yesterday. There are some beautiful buildings here. That many of them, having fallen into disrepair, I think have been beautifully restored. But it's evident that actually there is deprivation in this town. So real challenges there for policing and indeed for policing's partners.
Yes.
And this building is an illustration of those partnerships. Worth just reflecting very briefly that the governance here of the police is provided by a police fire and crime commissioner, a PFCC, one of I think just 5 or 6 in the UK, whereas most police governance is provided by police and crime commissioner, PCC, and or a mayor. So
yes.
Partnerships, key partnership here with fire. What other partnerships do you see as key for policing in delivering here for the people of Hanley and for the people of Stoke?
Well, if I sort of start internally and then work my way out, so whenever I joined Staffordshire about 2.5 years ago, and we'll touch on some of that later on, probably one of the key challenges for staff is there wasn't strong internal partnerships or working arrangements. Response and neighbourhood were at loggerheads, CID were set off to the side again, specialist crime, were a bit of an enigma for many of our frontline cops. So actually a key partnership in policing is how do you get the different parts of the policing family who should be comfortable with their specialisms to work together and collaboratively. So what we've got behind us is a joint base in terms of response and neighbourhood. We had 3 hubs previously, which on paper were very efficient and effective, but we lost local knowledge, we lost that joint working, and just the walking across the room and having conversations amongst people who work in different areas. My ambition, I would love to be able to get CID in this building as well as we've done in some of our other local policing team bases, but we'll see, baby steps initially. So those internal relationships and culture and team working and a family ethos is part of what's key for me in Staffordshire. Stepping away a little bit outside policing, I've talked about it already. In Stoke, we've got some brilliant leaders in Stoke Council who are very switched on to the challenges around domestic abuse, around kids in care, and I don't like to use the word demand, but the challenges that presents for partners about how we provide a better service and how we actually prevent a lot of that harm happening as opposed to getting better reacting to it. And health's a key partner around that as well.
So I should have said right at the top that Staffordshire Police has been in special measures. His Majesty's Inspectorate. I went to correct myself there, thinking I got it wrong. His Majesty's got it right. His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Service, to give them their full title. Put Staffordshire in special measures a small number of years ago. You have, with your officers and staff, managed to bring Staffordshire Police out of special measures just recently. And now, would it be fair to say that you are very much yourself personally and your officers and staff looking to the future that you can deliver for the force?
We are. I think a very brief reflection around the sort of journey we've been on is that actually a lot of the things we've done, or the things that we've changed, or the things that we've improved have come from staff themselves. I've just alluded to that local policing team model. So we've gone from 3 hubs to 10 local policing bases where we've brought neighbourhood and response and indeed CID back together. That was something before I joined. Staff said, this is what you need to do, this is what we need to make policing work. So a lot of the work we've done around Engage have come not just from the hard work of staff and them stepping up, but building in their ideas, listening to them and recognising that the front line in policing knows what's going on in a way that I don't, but also instinctively knows what will work in terms of addressing that. And it's not always about more people. Very often it's about more intelligent ways of working, or technology, or better partnerships, the way we've alluded to. So real progress, but this is hard yards. We're in the middle of the busiest local policing team in Staffordshire, and the guys and girls behind me, well actually there's very few of them in the building because they're all out on the streets dealing with the challenges they face. They're under real pressure, so for many of them I'm sure they'll be proud that we've stepped out of Engage stroke special measures, but the day after we did doesn't make their job any easier, so they are still under as much pressure as they were whenever we were in. But ambition in Staffordshire is not just to no longer be seen as inadequate. Staffordshire's got a really proud past. You've alluded to it, you see it in the buildings in and around us now in terms of the fabric of the place of Staffordshire, and that's exactly the same in terms of the fabric of Staffordshire Police. There's a desire to get back to the sort of dizzy heights of where the force was 15, 16, 17 years ago.
Let's go inside this joint fire and police building. Let's have a little bit of a look around. Let's hopefully speak to one or two of the individuals.
And before we do that, we talked about partnerships, we talked about internal, and then let's call it the partners around us. We're doing some really interesting stuff in Stoke at the minute with the private sector as well, about how we exploit technology, how we use that effectively, how we can, through AMPR and other technologies, just try and get a little bit further ahead of where the harm is as well. So I don't want to miss the opportunity around that as the sirens are deliberately turned on in the background.
So it's blue light ambulance on the way past. Chris, I'm delighted that you took the opportunity to also reflect on the wider partnerships that there are. Let's go inside and we'll take a look inside and see whether we can meet folk in here and see something about the building.
So in terms of the main building, a lot of the ground floor is where on occasion there will be, reception for members of the community coming in, well-being room, but a lot of the ground floor is primarily around fire service colleagues and kit and equipment. As we step up here, just to our left, we've got a really modern briefing room, which is your classic sort of AV briefing room as well, and as I say, needs to be big enough to cope with one of our biggest local policing teams.
Let's have a quick dive. Since you've mentioned it, we'll go in for 5 seconds, spin the camera around, and then we'll head back out again. So simply a briefing room.
Yeah. But what I would say is, and this is an interesting dynamic around police and fire being in the same space, there were some challenges about initially bringing police and fire together because, fire, and I use this word carefully, but it was used by colleagues, fire are very house proud in terms of how they run their estate. It's immaculate because they have to crash out on a regular basis and they need everything exactly where it is. Policing over the years, personal experience only, hasn't always been quite as house proud in terms of where their kit is and how buildings look. So I think fire have lifted the standard of us in terms of just how we look after our assets and manage our estate. And I think we've also brought a lot of information to bear with fire about what's going on out in communities and indeed how they can support us in community safety whilst recognising their own neutrality and difference of roles. So it's an interesting example of cultures coming together, not just organisations.
So behind you now are the two logos, Staffordshire Police and Staffordshire Fire and Rescue Service, along with the remark, working together to keep communities safe.
Yes.
So we've spoken about the importance of multi-agency working in so many areas. You've commented on the cultural differences that there are between police and fire. You've commented on the way in which a joint property base has actually, it certainly appears, helps both communities, both agencies, drawing on remarks that I picked up with fire colleagues just a little earlier. Hopefully we'll get them to talk about that on camera shortly. You're both fire and police there to serve the local community.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say that having this joint hub gives both the opportunity together to serve the community, local community here, even better than they were before?
It does. And like obviously from a police point of view, success for me is having Hanley empty of police officers on a regular basis because our challenges are regularly out on the streets. But in terms of briefings and debriefings, in terms of fire colleagues being able to pop into policing and sort of share key bits of community information about where they've maybe seen a risk within a home environment or whatever that would be, and vice versa. It's just those human conversations and human relationships informally which work very well. But then there's very clear structures as well from the very top to the bottom of fire and police where we're regularly having conversations about where are joint areas of interest going forwards, how can we do things once as opposed to twice. There's a lot of shared services. I think we're probably one of the most mature police and fire collaborations across the country in terms of what we do, and we can maybe talk about some of that as we go. But a lot of it is about just putting human beings in the same space and them recognising that they've got far more in common than they do different.
This is the exception in England and Wales for sure, and I think it's fair to say in the United Kingdom that fire and police share the same building.
And this is where our response and neighbourhood officers sort of have their work base.
So many of them will be out and about at the moment. I am going to be a little circumspect as I go through here as to what I put on camera. So if we just walk through, and we'll go straight through the far side.
Everybody's simply looking the other way. So.
It's strange the effect maybe it's not strange, the effect that the camera has on people. Most people try to avoid it. Let's just head out here. Most people try to avoid it, and There are one or two who are keen on finding the camera, but either way, we will get shortly some folk on camera. So this is now the canteen is behind you. We have a multi-faith room and well-being room just through there. There was a poster that you remarked on before we started the camera that was speaking about well-being. Stay where you are. I'm just. So, multi-faith room, well-being room, reflection there that there are many faiths and of those of no faith within any organisation. Also, yes. Well-being of staff and officers.
Yeah,
key.
And one of the services that we share with fire, well, there's two services actually. You've got an occupational health unit that works across both organisations, because again, a lot of the challenges that staff face, whether it be resilience, having experienced trauma, those matters cut across blue light services, and in particular fire and police. We also, from a diversity, equality and inclusion perspective, again share a service there, recognising that around culture, in terms of being inclusive, that the very same challenges that face policing face fire. So those are shared services that we have that just give us again an opportunity, I think, to learn from each other. And when we're doing something that works, that it scales up across two organisations and not just one.
Let's see if we can get one or two of the officers, staff, fire service representatives on camera, and then Chris we'll come together again and wrap up this particular segment. But for the time being, Chris Noble, Chief Constable of Staffordshire Police, many thanks.
Thank you.
Hello there, my name is Dan Wheeler. I'm the watch manager at Hanley Fire Station.
Hi, I'm Martin Cooper. I'm the crew manager on Hanley Red Watch.
So we've been asked to talk this morning briefly just around some of the benefits of co-locating in a joint location.
I think at first it was quite a shock to us. There's 4 or 5 firefighters working on this fire station, and for 60 police officers to come onto the station seemed something of a takeover. In actual fact, the co-location has worked very well. It's nice to see a familiar face on the incident ground, and you can share the information and return to the same hub to share that further.
Yeah, so we've been able to, with the benefits of that co-location and seeing familiar faces, when we've been going out onto incidents that have been quite prevalent, that they're crime related, it's been easy to come back and speak to relevant officers just to give them some insights, and that can be something from low level crime up to quite serious organised crime.
Your intro.
Okay. Good morning, my name's Vic Ison and I'm the local Deputy Commander at Hanley Police and Fire Service. I've been here since April. This is the first time I've worked in a shared building with the fire service, and I'm finding it really, really beneficial. And I'd just like to hand over to my colleague.
Hi, I'm PC Potts. I work in Hanley Response. One of the good things about working with the fire service is we can talk directly to each other. If there's an incident that they're going to or that we're going to, we can speak to each other and inform information back and forth. So obviously it's quick and concise rather than before where we're having to ring each other up and there's a bit of a delay.
So I think what we've seen is two organisations with some pretty similar outcomes being able to work together very effectively. And the feedback from the cops and the police staff is that Hanley is a really good building, but even more importantly, you've heard from them directly, the ability to have conversations, share information, share knowledge is pretty fundamental, not just to the present, but to the future, whether that be enabled by technology, joint estate, sharing of assets, shared services. You know, if we're going to be sustainable as a police service and have a greater impact in our communities, I think Hanley and what it represents is definitely the future for me.